Hello, everybody. My name is Sylvain Rochon, and I am the Paradise Engineer. Today, I want to talk about eugenics, which is it's kind of a swear word for some people, but it's just a word. So let's learn about it. And also, in parallel, which is basically the same thing, and many for on a technical point, human enhancement, right? So just to make the differences a bit, eugenics is a belief or a practice that where you're trying to produce some kind of a superior human being, or you're trying to enhance a human being in some way. Now, I like to see things rationally. Eugenics on its own, on its face, if you're not talking about superiority or inferiority, which and we'll get back to that plenty in this discussion, like the idea of enhancing human beings on its face is probably good. Like, we want to be less prone to disease, for example. We want to live healthier, longer lives. And this can be achieved by enhancing our DNA, our immune system capabilities, and so on and so on. So it can be an amazing thing. And we are doing exactly that. I've talked about this before. We are now using gene editing to modify our genetic code. Now, principally, what is acceptable regarding gene editing of humans specifically is curative. So trying to eliminate a genetic disease by fixing the gene that is problematic. And generally speaking, the majority of Americans that were surveyed by the Pew Institute, a Pew Research Center, for example, in 2018, and the Royal Society of Britain in another survey in 2018 as well, the majority of people surveyed, the general population, really agree about using gene editing to remove genetic diseases, even to remove conditions that may predispose individuals to a certain disease or problem, like could be cancer, could be AIDS, and things like that. The general population is accepting this as a way to prevent or cure disease in a general sense. So that's totally acceptable. Even though fundamentally we are enhancing ourselves by doing it. We are applying concepts of eugenics, but to a general population, to basically anybody that wants it. So people are very accepting of it. However, the same surveys show that in the US, only 19% of Americans that were surveyed agree that the genetic modification used to improve someone's intelligence, for example, is good. Sorry, only 90% think that is a good application for gene editing. In Britain, that kind of modification has a much higher approval rate, about 40% or 31%, depending on what cosmetic type of change. Like cosmetic changes, interestingly, in Britain, according to the survey, only 31% of people are in favor of cosmetic enhancements. Eye color, skin color, hair changes, and whatever. And 40% are in favor of ability changes like increasing someone's intelligence. So actual practical enhancements that are non-cosmetic. So the taste for non-treatment, non-curative gene editing in humans is higher in Britain than in America. Is it because in part of Americans being more religious? Playing God kind of being a no-no? I'm not sure, but they're less than 50% in both nations, and I would assume throughout Europe and also in Canada and a lot of countries would probably see similar things. Curing, preventing disease, no problem. Doing cosmetics and enhancements, that delves into uncomfortable areas, and that's because of our history. If you look at the history of the United States and also Europe in the last 100 years, you got a lot of cases of well, eugenics, but in a terrible sense. Like in the mid 20th century in the States, there was about 60,000 people. It was government sponsored sterilization campaign of certain types of mentally ill individuals to prevent them, you know, from having children, to propagate the mental illness condition in the population through childbearing. And that is a type of eugenics. You're trying to control the genetic pool by different means. They've been doing it through stringent immigration policies as well. And of course, there's Nazi Germany, which is a very clear example of eugenics, because they wanted to have a certain race. They declared a certain race being superior. A lot of other races or conditions, like the handicapped, for example, or people that were gay, to be inferior and undesirable to the human race in general. So they displaced them and later on tried to exterminate all of them, but managed to exterminate a lot, like millions. So that was a practical extermination of what the Nazis viewed as an inferior type of person, to cleanse the genetic pool in a way. But that's our history. These are not the only two examples. That's just a few. There's throughout history in all parts of the world, there have been attempts of genocide on the pretext of good, of cleaning the genetic pool, of allowing, like, kill a few to allow the majority, which is usually the majority in power, to have a better future, because then you don't have this mixing of these undesirable genes into the gene pool, or undesirable characteristics that are and this is all a construct of the societies in the different nations that thought this way, because you know, what is inferior or superior is a matter of perspective. Like of course, I wrote a whole article about this, and there's plenty of links, so you can check down below about the published article. But in a nutshell, inferiority and superiority is very subjective. I'll give you a couple examples. Like, we know that pets, like dogs, animals, are fairly intelligent, but not as intelligent. And intelligence is a real thing. So we're not equally intelligent. Not between humans, not between humans and animals. Intelligence is one characteristic of a being, of a living thing. But the dog still has capabilities that are way beyond ours. Like, it can run faster than a human being, for one. It can detect smells and like way more advanced than what we do. But what we do as in general is, like, we tend to do lists. Like, well, okay, we're superior because, like, if you draw a list of all the things that we can do and you rate them on average for humanity or for XYZ population, and you do the same for, let's say, the dog, and you draw averages, yeah, the dog has these things that's superior to us, but if you sum it up and you average it out, we will have a bigger average because we're more capable in doing more things, if you will. So you can measure superiority and inferiority in all sorts of ways and make a determination about that. But it's all about how you see. Like, is this list of or ability to do certain tasks really something that makes us superior and therefore have more freedom, more rights, and more responsibilities? I don't think so. Perhaps more responsibilities, but that's usually not a good thing. We want to be able to control our destiny and have more rights. And if diminishing another populations or another beings, right, including the pets and the animals, allows us more freedom and to exploit the other to a certain, while justifying it, then perhaps our lives will be enhanced. And that was the basis of things like slavery. Well, these are inferior, They're a bit more like animals, and here's how we treat animals, perhaps even in those days very unfairly, the animals. Well, it's their lot in life because they are inferior, and therefore, like in the status and class system of life, we can abuse you and you can do all these things, and it's perfectly fine. Whereas morally these days, we find that ideology reprehensible, and rightly so. Now we can extend that kind of thinking to artificial intelligence, but we are creating intelligence that, if you on a task per task basis, many of the artificial intelligences are more sophisticated, more intelligent, and more capable at its very specific task than a human expert, or any human expert on the planet. Does that make the AI inferior or superior to us humans that are more capable on more tasks, that are able to reproduce and doing other things? Well, we can have the discussion on it, but for sure it's more superior at doing that one task. Okay. Where are we going with this? Because we're creating life, artificial, synthetic, biological even. So since the early well, I guess the early 21st century, I believe, yeah. Craig Venter and other associates started creating cells, like the first artificially made cells. They created life that was laboratory made. It wasn't very sophisticated, granted. It was a lot of pieces from life forms here and there, but still it was the first attempt. And since then, we've been even more creative, like creating organic life. And we've been creative through engineers and programmers at creating artificial life in the form of AI and robots and automation. I mean, these deep learning systems that are modern day AI have motivations embedded inside their code so they can adapt to all sorts of situations. We essentially created a simple artificial or synthetic and synthetic life. No, either or. Even though we don't really see it as living because they don't reproduce, but when AI in collaboration with others and automated systems and actuators can build other robots and upgrade programs, will we consider that as more life because they can create new intelligences that are in a way self-aware? They're aware of where they're going, who they are, and what they want, and things like that, because it's part of their programming. It's part of the learning process. So it's really becoming kind of fuzzy. This tendency of humans, of our societies, to classify things according to a certain order, a natural order, they used to say, with humans being on top and everything else being on the bottom, and even within humanity having these subsets of classes traditionally that a lot of cultures cultivated, like I mentioned before, the slave owners versus slaves, and in India you had like a caste system that classified human beings according to a certain scale as well. Like this whole thing, these are all artificial constructs of classification that our societies have decided, and usually the ruling class or whoever is in power at the time decided, well, it's this way because, insert reason here. Now with gene modification, we can cure diseases. That's great. Those people that have access to the genetic cures, if it's not accessible to everybody or it's expensive, will become enhanced. But that's totally acceptable by the society according to the surveys. But they will be less susceptible to disease. They'll live longer life. They will reproduce and have children that have a higher quality genetic code because it's less damaged and diseased. Are these people suddenly a different class of humans that deserve special rights, special recognition, and so on? Well, we could, as a society, decide that it is so. But I would caution individuals to think this way. But just like a person that may have, let's say, that runs really fast, like an Olympic runner, okay? This person can be seen as superior, like it's obviously a superior physical specimen, if you will, because its body and this person's training and his body, him or her, can do something that very, very few people are capable of doing. Is that very different, the training and all that stuff, and the genetic mix that brought that possibility, that potential up, is that very different than artificial genetic enhancement through artificial means? Like, is that person superior to everybody else? Should that person be put on a different class with different rights and responsibilities? Well, our society currently, in modern society at least, we think no, everybody's equal, whether you're mentally ill, genetically, let's say, or just clinically for a period of time until you get treatment, or you're a superstar athlete, or you're working in a mine, or you're just a simple parent living at home raising kids. We consider everybody having equal rights, not because we've measured and listed and averaged your skills and your potential out, and we determined like, oh, okay, we're all equal that way, just because we decided that everybody that has this human form, the way it is, has or must have equal rights. That is a social decision we made. It's not because of scientific measurement of any way. And we feel comfortable with that in the West and in the most developed nations, and other nations are catching on to that, or if not already on board with that ideology, pretty much everyone in the world. Now, jump in like new life creation, biological or synthetic, because they are not technically human, we're considering them more as tools, whereas I think we'll have to eventually see most intelligent life that is able to, artificial or biological, by the way, that is able to perceive itself, to have some kind of level of consciousness of self, will need to have basically equal right across the board. Not only humans versus animals versus everything. We're already tending towards that with the animals. We want animals to feel free, feel comfortable. We don't want to be cruel. I think these are great ideas. It all surrounds a very basic concept, which is just strictly put, happiness, right? Not every living thing has the same motivation. The mouse, speaking of animals, his motivation is mostly reproduction and eating, deriving pleasure from doing such things. Reproduction, eating, perhaps they have little games and activities they play as well, and they derive some kind of biochemical burst that gives them a sense of pleasure. And we know for sex they do, but for other things we assume they do, because that's why we get motivated to do certain things. It's because we have these hormones pop in that gives us a sense of joy or a sense of comfort. But other mice, when one mouse gets eaten by a fox, the other mice get temporarily traumatized by the event, and we can't communicate with the mice to know exactly what their thinking is, but very soon after they continue doing what they want to do and deriving pleasure from all these other things. And it seems as if they're forgetting, the mice 279 that has gone in the belly of the fox. And the fox is also doing the same thing. He's chasing mice because he wants to eat, deriving pleasure from the hunt, from eating, and from doing everything that a fox would normally do, and trying to avoid discomfort by avoiding pain and suffering and being out in the rain if it's too cold, and all these things. Every living thing have drivers, have emotions, and we're coding emotions into AI so that they can learn and behave in a certain predictable way without everything having to be pre-coded line by line. Each behavior, it can learn and kind of interact and adapt to the environment. They're both basically similar constructs, just different mechanisms of work and different motivations encoded into the different beings, if you will, artificial or synthetic, or biological, or natural. I'm using different words here. And we're all, if you follow our, let's say, instincts, our biology, our drive to get pleasure, excuse me, get to run after pleasure and to avoid discomfort, even though the drivers and what gets us the pleasure and avoiding to discomfort is different from species to species, and also for AI that we code in. We live in the same world, and we can coexist and give each other the same rights and responsibilities that are in line with our programming, if you will. So human beings can live successfully and happily together with all the differences between human beings that they may be, and genetically enhanced or not, fixed genetic code out of disease or not, by just accepting that all life should have the same rights and responsibilities to chase their happiness and avoiding discomfort. They have the right to do that, and it should be that way. And we should respect the animals. We should respect the AI that are trying to go about their lives and doing certain things. And we do suffer from temporary discomforts at times, just like the mice community suffers from a temporary discomfort when one mouse gets eaten by a fox. And we suffer the same discomfort when something happens to us, like we lose a loved one by accident, or something that we really, really wanted is taken away from us by accident or intentionally or whatever. Same would happen in a very odd way to the artificial intelligence if they can't achieve their goals to gain pleasure and avoiding discomfort, which is their negative programming to avoid certain things. They, in a way, they kind of suffer. I mean, it's not felt the way we do, like, because we understand feeling and we know it's uncomfortable, but it's the same kind of drawback inside the machine too. It's kind of a negative. It's something that it would vehemently try to avoid in the future, just like something that is uncomfortable for us. We want to really avoid that in the future. Same thing. It just, they feel that in a program way, in an artificial way, that belongs to the AI. So we want the AI to have this kind of suffering, and suffering is natural. It's a way for us to distance ourselves from things that we shouldn't be encountering or touching. Well, the AI has to encounter some kind of discomfort to learn how to avoid it, just like we encounter discomfort to learn how to avoid that. So circling back to genetic enhancement, there is technically no issue in cosmetic enhancements or practical ability enhancements in this described brave new world where everybody has similar rights and responsibilities. And because it really doesn't matter what got enhanced, you're still a being that has motivations that is driving towards happiness and then trying to avoid discomfort. You know, if you have a higher intelligence, it just gives you more responsibility in a way, because then you understand the world a lot better. So you can see things that the others can't see, and how to synthesize how the world works. So, and on top of that too, like with all this automation going on, like enhancing abilities is not that great an idea. It doesn't really help a lot of people unless it's vanity or it's for bragging rights. Because if I have a friend of mine who gets enhanced, to let's say to run real fast. Okay, I already run really slowly, so not really competing. He doesn't have a lot of bragging rights if he races against me in a foot race. But if his purpose is to move fast from place to place, go around, I can use an e-vehicle, I can use a drone, I can use the bus. I mean, I'll get there. We're not really competing. I'm using tools to do the same thing. So I really don't mind if he has that person has that enhancement. Okay, he can run fast. All right, great. Right? Or this person has an enhanced intelligence. Okay, he understands the universe better than I do, probably. That's great, but I have access to the whole universe and through the internet, and through that person that's plugged into the internet. So, okay, I'm not generating the ideas on my own, but I can access the same information and conclusion through the technology that we have, through the tools that we have. So, as long as we're no longer working in the world where, living in a world where people that have enhanced abilities or enhanced wealth or position kind of join hands and try to suppress others, then we're fine. And just being in this world where everybody is kind of equal and we respect each other, it kind of like drowns out a lot of the motivation behind ability enhancements in the first place. Because why enhance yourself in a certain ways if it doesn't really increase your happiness in the world, doesn't really give you anything tangible, doesn't make you feel better about yourself. You know, it's a bit similar to cosmetic surgery, like actual cosmetic surgery itself, without the gene editing involved. Some people feel compelled to modify their bodies for vanity reasons, for purely, aesthetic reasons, or to feel more comfortable about themselves. They have all sorts of motivations around it, but it's not something that most cultures embrace in a broad sense. There's some nations that are trending into cosmetic surgery at this time, and it's very much a social event. Like in Korea, for example, there's this notion that beautiful eyes are big, more the Western style eyes. And Asians genetically have like an extra eyelid. It's not really an extra eyelid. It's not like they're lizards or anything, but they have like a thicker eyelid. Okay. So it kind of weighs on the eye, so it makes the almond shape. So a lot of Koreans specifically, more so the women, they get a very light cosmetic surgery to kind of thin that out, so it gives them bigger eyes. The eyelid is not as thick, so the eyes stay wider open and it looks bigger. So it's a bit of vanity. It's the idea of beauty right now is the big eyes. In 20 years from now, the concept of beauty will probably change to something different, and those ideas will go away. That doesn't mean that they're enhanced in a practical sense or any sense that will give them happiness. It's just the social construct inside Korea is that, well, beauty is big eyes, and that's a temporary notion. So genetic enhancements, I'm all for it, but as long as we are a wise society and we don't create ideas of superiority within using that, just like we did in the past. And we should be moving forward and creating more equality, despite the introduction of cosmetic genetic engineering or ability enhancements or things like that, because ultimately we're all equal in our goal to be happy and to avoid discomfort. These are the emotional drivers that make us do anything and everything that we do during our day and throughout our lives. So other people being enhanced should not affect, in a practical sense, our happiness. Because happiness is internal. It's not something that's derived from something you see from the outside. Even though some people will enjoy enhancement, like I may enjoy some enhancements after they fix all my genetic code and I got to remove some of the defects in the genes that cause problems in my body. That's a source of discomfort. That's desirable to actually get that fixed. I think we'll be in a good position if we can continue on the path that we are now, being thoughtful, being using methodology to test the technique, make sure it's safe, because it's fairly long term. If your genetic code is changed, and if it's not changed properly or in the wrong places because we haven't refined the technology enough, it's going to cause us more suffering later than what it promises as a cure now. So we have to go through these steps of discovery and implementation and testing and kind of watching over the changes that are being made. There's already some people are being cured of genetic disease. Genetic blindness is one of the first, for example. And there are plans for a lot of other diseases, all genetic diseases or that involve the genes can be cured and treated using gene editing, including AIDS, including herpes virus based diseases that are based on herpes virus, or herpes being one of them. Cystic fibrosis, and there's all sorts of blindness and all sorts of conditions that are caused by bad genes. It's amazing, but we don't want the fix to be a longer term problem. So we're doing the due diligence, and those researchers that are stepping ahead and kind of modifying humans, like the Mr. He in China. He's doing 3 years in prison. He was sentenced to 3 years in prison now for modifying the code of twin babies who are actually embryos at the time when the modification happened, to prevent them from being able to get AIDS. So that's, I mean, the intention is good, but the science wasn't there yet to really to start making these modifications on humans. And so he got caught. Well, he didn't get caught. He announced it, but he got imprisoned by the Chinese government for 3 years for doing that. It's a bit too early. So we have these processes in place to kind of test the technology, make sure it's going to be okay and safe. We're still going to make mistakes along the way. So the main question is really the social change. Like we do want to avoid the eugenics, like the scary eugenics, but we do want to have access to all these enhancements for just to be able to flexibly modify ourselves to be better and be happier. And that should be the goal. And part of the social shift to avoid disastrous declarations of superiority and inferiority and within the human population is to remove people from the labor of work and the power struggles between rich and poor and things like that. But if we flatten all these pyramids of power, as we are currently doing through technology and social thinking and social reconstruction, then we can avoid a lot of that stuff, because our thinking will be more evolved, and it will think more and more about life in a general sense, and everybody's right to feel comfortable within it. So those are my thoughts on that. Hopefully you enjoyed the thinking, and it caused you to think a bit. If you want to interact with me with this video, well, write a comment. I usually respond to comments, and if you have something to say, please say it. If you disagree, please argue. No problem. This is a discussion. And hopefully you'll subscribe. You can follow some more of my thoughts, and we'll interact with each other over the time. Okay, so another article soon, I'm pretty sure. So I keep writing about twice a month, and I keep making these videos twice a month as well, approximately. I'm not that diligent in timing. And I wish you a good new year, because this is 2020, first video of 2020. It's great. And yeah, let's have fun with gene editing the right way. Bye-bye.